We haven't gotten a single trade this NBA season so far, and we're about a month out from the 2026 trade deadline. So today, I'm going to be giving you guys 15 different trade ideas to maybe shake up the league. And like always, would love to know your guys' thoughts and opinions on these trades. Do you think they're extremely lopsided? Do you think there's a 0% chance at them happening? Or do you like one of these and you could see a team that's maybe contending look to make a move like one of these on the margins to go out and win the title this year? And we're going to start off with one that I think just makes a ton of sense. On January 15th, Jonathan Kuminga is going to be eligible to be traded from Golden State. That just feels like inevitable at this point. So I'm going to send him, Moses Moody, Buddy Hield, and a first-round pick from the Warriors in this year's draft in 2026 to Brooklyn for Michael Porter Jr. and Hayward Highsmith. So the main reason for this trade, Golden State goes out and they get somebody that's 6'10" that could be a really good tertiary scorer or secondary scorer behind Steph Curry and maybe Jimmy Butler as well. This year, Michael Porter Jr. has been a very solid number one option for the Brooklyn Nets. He's averaging 26 points, 7 rebounds, 3.5 assists, shooting 50% from the field, 41% from three, 81% from the free throw line. And there's always going to be a ceiling on how you could look with Michael Porter Jr. as your number one option. The Nets objectively are not a good team right now, but it's more so the talent around Michael Porter Jr. But he has honestly played in big moments as a number 3 option in Denver before. He would go in and I think could still average over 20 points per game for Golden State, a team that needs size, somebody that could be in that front court with Draymond Green and could also just be a big time shot maker for Golden State. And Porter Jr. I think is extremely tradable right now from the Brooklyn Nets. And you're just fine trading away Jonathan Kuminga, who's not really giving you anything, Buddy Hield and Moses Moody to make the money work, and a 2026 first round pick, and Golden State can have some type of closing lineup with Steph. Maybe it's Pods or it's Will Richard, and then you have Jimmy Butler, Michael Porter Jr., and Draymond Green. They could still have Quinn and Post go in those rotations as well. Maybe they go out and make a different move as well to go get a center upgrade over Al Horford. I think this makes a ton of sense for Golden State, who's trying to put this last-ditch effort around Steph Curry. Steph's got a couple years left on the deal. Same with Draymond. Michael Porter Jr. has 2 years left remaining as well, so his free agency would line up with Jimmy Butler's if they kind of wanted to reshape this roster when Steph is 40, and I assume will be retired when he's 40. So I think it makes sense there for Golden State, especially with this where you're not trading any future first round picks in the 2030s because you have no idea how you're going to look without Steph Curry. Michael Porter Jr. is 27 years old, and maybe you're giving up the 20th pick in this year's draft like you did in 2025 for Jimmy Butler. For Brooklyn, the fact that you can get positive return value for Michael Porter Jr. I thought Michael Porter Jr. had 0 trade value going into the year, and this was looked at as a negative contract, but he's really turned around his value in Brooklyn this year with the big time shot making, with the ball creativity, and Brooklyn could get Jonathan Kuminga, who's still a young asset to have in this league that you could figure out if you like going forward. Moses Moody, a really good 3-point shooter, and I think would fit Jordy Fernandez's offense very well. Buddy Hield doesn't have guaranteed money after this year fully, so you can get rid of him, and then you get another first round pick in this 2026 draft, which looks a lot stronger on paper than the 2027 draft. So I think this could be a really good return for Brooklyn. The only thing for them is they're obviously not getting somebody as good as Michael Porter Jr. in this deal, and Brooklyn doesn't own their 2027 first round pick. That's going to Houston, so I'm pretty sure that they're going to try to be good in the 2027 season, and I wonder if that means that they're going to try to keep Michael Porter Jr. and look to add an asset around him this offseason. But I like this one a ton for Golden State. The Boston Celtics are exceeding expectations this year. They're one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference with Jason Tatum not playing a single game, who we think is going to come back at some point this year. Jaylen Brown is playing at an MVP caliber level and should be an all-star starter coming out of the East this year. And they're a top 5 team this year in terms of net rating. They're pretty much league average defensively, but they're an elite offensive team, 4th in the league in offensive rating with no Jason Tatum. They're getting really good role-playing ability out of Hugo Gonzalez, the rookie, Jordan Walsh, who are stepping up around guys like Peyton Pritchard, Jaylen Brown, and Derek White. So I'm going to have them go out and add a center, something we think that they're going to inevitably do. And they're going to be calling up the Dallas Mavericks, and they're going to send Anthony Simons, a 2026 first round pick, and a 2031 swap with Dallas in exchange for Klay Thompson and Daniel Gafford. Now, for one, I just want to see Klay Thompson on a playoff team this year just because Klay doesn't have many years left in his career, and we know that Boston is going to be most likely making the playoffs this year. Klay is 35 years old. He'll be 36 a couple days after the trade deadline, but I think would fit in this Boston Celtics offense as a 3-point shooter. He's still shooting 35% from 3 this year. There is some notable regression. It's really just to get to the magic money of Anthony Simons, but the reason why Boston would do this trade to go out and get Daniel Gafford, who maybe has a low point in his value right now. He's had some injuries this year in the 2026 season, playing less minutes per game, and I don't think has looked as physical, or at least as bounty as he's had in years past. So maybe the Celtics would be buying low with this deal. Daniel Gafford is also under contract for the next 4 seasons. All of those 4 years are under $20 million, and they'd be getting their starting center from somebody that's 27 right now till his age 31 season. For Anthony Simons, who they might not even bring back at the end of the year, their 2026 first round pick, which could just end up being pick 24, and a swap in 2031 when you still have the core of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, you'd hope still in their primes by then. So I think Boston could look to buy low in Daniel Gafford. As for Dallas, they pretty much get expiring money here, so they're going to have more cap flexibility in the offseason. No Clay money next year on the books, no Gafford money on the books for the next 4 years. You get an additional first round pick in 2026, as now you're trying to get younger around Cooper Flag moving forward, and you get a swap in 2031. Who knows what that value could be? I feel like it would make sense for Dallas if they had a chance to get off of this Daniel Gafford contract, and this could be a win-win trade for both teams. Now we'll stay on the topic of a Dallas center getting traded. I actually have 3 different ideas if they wanted to trade any one of their centers. So this one is actually one of my favorite ideas that I came up with. The Dallas Mavericks and the Indiana Pacers are agreeing on a trade that's going to send Benedict Mathurin and a lottery protected first in 2027 to Dallas in exchange for D'Angelo Russell and Derek Lively. Now D'Lo's got to be in this trade to make the money work. He obviously doesn't feel like an Indiana Pacer. He could get rerouted to a third team or just be let go at the end of the year. And you can also make this trade maybe without the first round pick. I assume Indiana is going to be competing, or at least trying to compete, for a number 1, 2, or 3 seed in the Eastern Conference next year, and they're willing to trade away the 25th pick in the 2027 draft, which is also looked at as a weaker draft, and there's a lot of protection on this. So say somehow next year goes horribly wrong, somebody gets injured again, they have the security just in case that pick does go up in value, but they're getting Derek Lively, who's also under control for 1 more year after Benedict Mathurin, who's currently out for the year with a foot injury in Dallas, but I just feel like this would be a very good buy low option. Benedict Mathurin is a free agent at the end of the year. Dallas has all these big men on their roster right now, so if they ended up trying to trade Derek Lively, who's 21 years old, but you can get a solid wing scorer next to Cooper Flag, you get a good athletic scorer, somebody that's played in the playoffs before, plus a first round pick next year for Derek Lively, who you may be hesitant on giving an extension to this offseason. I don't see that happening, just because Derek Lively has been banged up most of his career. 55 games as a rookie in 2024, 36 games as a sophomore last year, and then just 7 games this year. The production has also taken a little bit of a hit ever since Luka Doncic got traded, and we know that Indiana wants a center long term, so they get the 21-year-old. Maybe they can get him on a below market value extension in the offseason, and they think that Lively could go back to his 2024 production when he's playing with somebody that's just as good of a passer as Luka Doncic and Tyrese Halliburton in Indiana. And I think this is a fun young player for young player trade. So the Atlanta Hawks have not been playing great basketball this year when Trae Young has been on the court. This team is currently 16-19 in the Eastern Conference. Not good whatsoever given their expectations to possibly finish top 5 in the conference going into the year. Trae Young could also be a free agent at the end of the year. So it's going to be one of 2 Trae Young trade ideas that I have for you guys today. This one is going to send Trae Young to the Sacramento Kings in exchange for Zach LaVine, their first round pick this year, but it's top 5 protected, and a 2028 first rounder. And honestly, this might be too rich. I do think the Sacramento Kings could throw a top 10 protection on that because they are one of the worst teams in the NBA right now. They do have technically the 3rd worst record in the NBA. So hey, if they get lucky in the lottery and they have a chance to take Peterson, Boozer, DeBits in the top 3, they could do that. It's a top 5 protection, and it does feel like this is either a 3 or 4 person draft at the top with those 3 guys that I just talked about, plus Caleb Wilson at UNC. And then I feel like it's a bunch of point guards that are also going to go in the back half of the top 10, like Kingston Flemings, like Mikael Brown, like LeBaron Philon, maybe Darius Akuff, and they don't need to draft a point guard because they do have Trae Young. So you're essentially going from Zach LaVine to Trae Young. You're throwing in your first round pick this year, which could be pick 8, but if it goes in the top 3, you get to keep it, and then you also give up your 2028 first round pick. I'm trying to replicate the Brandon Ingram and Pascal Siakam midseason trades that went down. Like I said, the 2026 first rounder could be a little bit too rich, and then maybe you make that pick top 10 protected, or maybe you throw in a different first round pick in this deal as well, and Sacramento gets that point guard that they've now been trying to find for a year ever since they traded away De'Aaron Fox, and then a couple years ago, Tyrese Halliburton. I feel like they would have the resources to go out and extend Trae Young. You'd have Trae Young, Domantas Sabonis, and Keegan Murray there in Sacramento. It does feel like we're almost getting to an endpoint of Trae Young in Atlanta. So for Atlanta here, you maybe have a chance at getting the 7th, 8th overall pick in this year's draft. You get a future unprotected first rounder from the Kings, which is always a smart idea. And you get Zach LaVine, who's still a good 3-point shooter, who's still a good secondary or tertiary scoring option next to Jalen Johnson in Atlanta. He just has 1 year left on the deal, but you're at least accumulating some assets for Trae Young, who could just leave you for nothing in the offseason. I do have another Sacramento Kings trade involving a point guard, and this one is sending Dennis Schroeder to the Minnesota Timberwolves for from Mike Conley and Rob Dillingham. I feel like Rob Dillingham might be a sunk cost in Minnesota. They traded essentially 2 first-round picks to go up and get him on the night of the 2024 draft, but he's now been replaced by Bones Highland in this rotation. This year, Rob Dillingham, the 6'2" point guard, about 170 pounds, is averaging 3.9 points, 1.9 assists, is shooting 35% from the field and 34% from 3. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to trust him in a playoff series this year, and Mike Conley is also 38 years old, so you get a way better point guard than Dennis Schroeder, who essentially just has one more year of guaranteed money after this year. I thought Schroeder was a really good point guard defensively for the Detroit Pistons in the 2025 playoffs, and he's somebody that could be out there with Anthony Edwards in the backcourt, or at least just gives you such a huge upgrade over Mike Conley. Rob Dillingham as your backup point guard behind the Anthony Edwards, Dante DiVincenzo backcourt. Schroeder's averaging about 13 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 6 assists this year, shooting 41% from the field, 35% from 3, and 83% from the free throw line. And like I said, he's also under control next year as well, so if they wanted to maybe leverage that $15 million contract that he's owed in 2027 in a separate deal, they could do that, and then he would be off the books completely in 2028, because I'm not sure, as we get further and further away of Rob Dillingham going in that top 10 in the 2024 draft, they're going to be able to get somebody as good as Dennis Schroeder right now. Maybe there's a chance Rob Dillingham turns it around and could be a good point guard in Minnesota for the long term. I just feel like the odds of that are very low. Now, I don't have a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade idea in this video. I just feel like that would happen in the offseason, although I do think Milwaukee should maybe go in a different direction. But it does feel like if Milwaukee is going to make a notable trade this year at the deadline, it's going to be to add around Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Bucks are 14-20 right now. Giannis is back. They recently just lost to the Washington Wizards again this year with Giannis playing. But all the rumors and reports coming out of Milwaukee's camp, it does feel like they're going to have also a last-ditch effort to try to make Giannis happy. And there's been some links to the New Orleans Pelicans and DeJounte Murray. So I have them going out and getting DeJounte Murray, who should be returning hopefully in January from that torn Achilles he had last year, and Saddiq Bey, who's been a great scoring wing, going to Milwaukee in exchange for Kyle Kuzma, Bobby Portis, and a future first-round pick in 2032, top 5 protected. So Milwaukee doesn't have a ton of draft capital to move at all, really, from the Drew Holiday and Damian Miller trades that pretty much handicap them going forward. And even the Chris Middleton, Kyle Kuzma trade last year, they get to some matching salary with Kuzma and Portis, who could definitely be rerouted out of New Orleans. I feel like for New Orleans, it's a smart idea to get a future first-round pick from the Milwaukee Bucks, because even if Giannis is somehow still there in the year 2032, he's going to be around 36, 37 years old, with this team also having no draft capital really leading up to that draft to really add younger talent around Giannis. So I think that's a good investment to have moving forward, and then that can go down to like top 3 protector or something like that the following year. They can maybe give Kuzma and Bobby Portis decent minutes to build up the trade value, since they're both under contract in the offseason, to potentially move them in June or July to a team trying to win now in 2027. And Milwaukee goes out and gets Saddiq Bey in this trade, which is a big get. Saddiq Bey at 26 years old this year is making about $6 million this year, and next year he's having a really good career resurgence. 15 points, 6 rebounds, 44% from the field, 32% from 3, and 80% from the free throw line. Saddiq Bey is about at his career high in terms of field goal attempts per night, because New Orleans needs him to step up. There's not many other shot creators on this team when Zion Williamson is hurt, and some other guys were hurt at the start of the year as well, and I think could just be a really good rotational piece for Milwaukee moving forward, since he's under contract this year, obviously, and next year as well. And the big risk here is DeJounte Murray, who's not really costing you that much. It is 2 rotational players, but you hope that you can get a good enough version of DeJounte Murray in a scaled back role coming off this Achilles tear, who was not good for New Orleans last year in his 31 games after getting traded to New Orleans in the 2024 offseason, but was still a productive player on the offensive end for Atlanta in 2024. We all knew that it really didn't work out with him and Trae Young in the backcourt. I think it'd be a little bit different sharing that backcourt with either AJ Green or Ryan Rollins. And he's also under contract for the 2027 season at $32.7 million, and then has a player option for 2028 at $30.7 million. So New Orleans could get out of that long-term money as well. And to be honest with you, it may not even cost a future first-round pick either. I do have another Saddiq Bey trade idea, and this one is actually for the Oklahoma City Thunder, who I didn't really think were going to make a trade at all this season. They're 29-5, and hey, maybe they do go out and make a deal, and this one would be on the margins to go out and get Saddiq Bey from the Pelicans, somebody that could be a good 3-point shooter for this team that has definitely had its ups and downs in terms of 3-point shooting this year, with J-Dub just shooting 31% from 3 after returning, Lou Dort shooting 32% from three. Caruso is shooting 32% from three. Jalen Williams has not been a good three-point shooter either. And I feel like they can look for somebody in Sadiq Bey, who's also making about $6 million next year as well for the matching salary of Ousmane Dieng, and maybe the Philadelphia 76ers first-round pick this year, which is right now projected at number 19. I think Philly's going to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, so this would be a pretty good pick coming back to New Orleans, where OKC can kind of outbid any other Sadiq Bey shooters out there. Like, they can easily outbid anything maybe the New York Knicks had to offer or another contending team. New Orleans gets to take a chance on Ousmane Dieng for the final 40 or so games throughout the regular season, and they can see if he's worth giving an extension to in the offseason and giving him that qualifying offer as well. And we actually get to finally see Ousmane Dieng play real minutes, something we haven't really seen in quite some time given how deep OKC is. So OKC gives up one of maybe their 3 first-round picks this year. Maybe it's the Houston Rockets pick instead. They give up Ousmane Dieng, who they might not even extend in the offseason, for Sadiq Bey, who could also be here next year when they may have to reshuffle their roster with the second apron. Maybe they don't bring back Lou Dort in the offseason, or they have to trade somebody else, and Sadiq Bey could be somebody that could still give you 20 plus minutes a night for about $6 million. I have an in-state trade here of the state of Texas between the Dallas Mavericks and the San Antonio Spurs. I have Kelly Olynyk's expiring contract and a 2028 swap between Boston and San Antonio in 2028 for Najee Marshall and D'Angelo Russell. Now, once again, D'Lo could be rerouted to a third team. He could be let go. This is just to make the money work, but I think Najee Marshall would be a really good get for San Antonio. Maybe at times they would rather prefer a good three-point shooter. Maybe they are a Sadiq Bey team as well, but Najee Marshall has been great this year for the Dallas Mavericks in about 35 games, 13 points, 4.7 rebounds, shooting 53% from the field, 31% from three. It's not like he's a non-shooter out there. He's not a great shooter, but he can at least be serviceable enough, and 81% from the free throw line. I feel like San Antonio loves these athletic wings that can cut and slash around Wemby and their guards in the backcourt, and Najee Marshall could be another depth piece to Champagnie, Vassell, Johnson moving forward, because Marshall is also under contract next year at a really nice price tag of just $9.4 million. Harrison Barnes is a free agent. Jeremy Showen is a free agent. It gives them another forward moving forward. Dallas at least gets a future first-round pick in 2028, a pick they do not have their first-round pick in directly. And this is a swap best between the San Antonio Spurs and the Boston Celtics. I expect both of those teams to be good in 2028. That's why I feel like San Antonio would be fine with moving off from this pick. And San Antonio also gets Najee Marshall's contract instead of Kelly Olynyk's expiring deal, which could also be leveraged in a bigger trade if San Antonio wanted to do that in this offseason. We'll stay in the state of Texas. I have the Houston Rockets adding a shooter. The Rockets have the lowest three-point shooting rate in the NBA. They have guys that aren't as comfortable on the perimeter. Let's go out and get Gary Trent Jr. from the Milwaukee Bucks. So this one's a little bit on a lesser scale than some of the other trades we've talked about. 3 second-rounders and Clint Capella going to Milwaukee in exchange for Gary Trent Jr. Milwaukee essentially owns no second-round draft capital over the next few years, so they get to replenish some of that here for Gary Trent Jr., who could just be a free agent at the end of the year. Clint Capella hasn't really played a ton this year for the Houston Rockets, given that they have Alperen Şengün and Steven Adams. And Capella could be an upgrade over somebody like a Jericho Sims, or at least another depth piece to him and Miles Turner moving forward, who's also under contract next year, and maybe Milwaukee can leverage his $6.7 million in a trade this offseason. And then, yeah, they pick up those 3 second-rounders as well. Gary Trent is shooting sub 40% from the field this year, but he is shooting 37% from three. He's 26 years old, and I feel like just gives Houston another good shooter in that backcourt moving forward, because they can't trust Amen Thompson as a shooter. You're not really trusting Alperen Şengün as a three-point shooter either, and it just gives you another depth piece next to Reed Shepherd as a shooter. You know, I had to talk about my New York Knicks in a trade, right? So they're going to call up the Washington Wizards, and they're going to try to send them Gershon Yabusele, who's got about a $5 million player option next year, Bakome Dadeye, a recent first-round pick, but maybe not the best player in the world, a first-round pick this year from the Washington Wizards, which is their top 8 protected pick, so they get the peace of mind. God forbid this team goes on a winning streak in March, and they're kind of like last year's Nets or Pelicans team, and they drop in the lottery. They get the peace of mind that there's 0% chance they lose their pick now, plus they get a second-rounder, which is actually their second-round pick back in return. So this is another top 35 pick in this draft for Justin Champagnie and Marvin Bagley. The Knicks definitely need another athletic wing coming off the bench this year. They have a ton of guards coming off the bench in Landry Shamet, Miles McBride, Tyler Kolek, but Champagnie gives them another option with Kevin McCullough out there. Champagnie is 24 years old. He's from Brooklyn. His brother Julian Champagnie just lit it up against the Knicks the other night, knocking down double-digit threes, and Champagnie's making $2.6 million next year, plus a $3 million team option for the 2028 season, and the Knicks are always going to have to worry about the second apron, so this saves them some money long term, getting a solid chance on a rotational wing. Plus, they get Marvin Bagley in this trade, who's actually had a nice career resurgence, I would say, this year in Washington. We know that he could be a solid scoring big off the bench. 10 points, 5.5 rebounds, 62% from the field, 42% from three. He could be a free agent at the end of the season as well, but it gives them another piece behind Mitchell Robinson and Karl-Anthony Towns in that front court, and definitely an upgrade over Trey Jamison or Ariel Hook-Porty this year, because I feel like if the Knicks do make a trade, it's going to be something on a smaller scale like this. My next trade idea is the Denver Nuggets going out and adding another big because of the injuries to Nikola Jokic and Jonas Valanciunas right now. This team is banged up across the board, and they're going to go out and trade with a division rival, the Portland Trailblazers. They're getting Robert Williams, Time Lord, who's also had a nice career resurgence this year, in exchange for Zeke Naji, maybe one of the worst rotational players in the NBA, not under a great contract either, but they also get Julian Strawther, who's also kind of fallen out of the Nuggets rotation this year, plus they get a swap with them in 2030. So Robert Williams just gives them another depth piece at that big man spot going into the playoffs. He's averaging about 6 points, 6.5 rebounds this year, shooting 69% from the field, and kind of looks like the Robert Williams of old, and could show everybody that he's still a good defender, and he gets to kind of prove himself on a national stage in the playoffs as well. With the Portland Trailblazers being about 14-20, I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs, or at least if they do, it's going to be as a play-in tournament team. And I don't expect them to beat OKC, but he gets to go to Denver in this trade, a team that is trying to win it all this year. They do have to take on the Zeke Naji bad contract, but you get an unprotected swap in 2030 for somebody that could just leave you in free agency in Robert Williams. And you take a chance on a young guy as well in Julian Strawther, who is still under contract under that rookie deal of about $2.5–3 million for the 2027 season. And the Blazers need all the help they can get with their bench guards. They've had to ask Caleb Love to step up this year, and he has at times, but I think Strawther just gives them another weapon that they can maybe deploy out there in the second half of the season. So we have 4 trades remaining, and they all involve 4 different all-stars. The first one we're going to talk about is an LA Clippers trade, and this one is going to send James Harden to the Toronto Raptors. Now, the Clippers have been playing some good basketball as of late. They're up to the 11th seed in the Western Conference, and hey, they're only like 8 games back of winning the Pacific Division right now. Kawhi Leonard and James Harden have been playing out of their minds as of late, but maybe this is where they sell high on James Harden. They're going to call up the Toronto Raptors, and they're going to get Emmanuel Quickley and his not so favorable contract, but still is a good player at times. Grady Dick, who's kind of also been slightly disappointing this year for Toronto. His value may be kind of low than what people thought it could be going into this year. You get their 2026 first round pick, which right now would be at number 20, given that the Toronto Raptors are the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, and you get their 2028 first round pick as well. Toronto gets an all-star level point guard in James Harden, and they think that they can maybe make it to the Eastern Conference Finals this year. I don't think anybody's terrified of playing the Celtics, the Pistons, or the Knicks right now in the Eastern Conference, which is just wide open for so many teams to go to the conference finals. Harden is averaging 26 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, shooting 43% from the field, 36% from 3, and 88% from the free throw line. I think you'd like to know if he would sign an extension, maybe a new 1 to 2 year deal in the offseason, since you're giving up 2 rotational guys plus 2 first round picks. But I personally like Jacoby Walter, maybe over Grady Dick long term. Grady Dick could be a free agent at the end of next year, and you get off this Emmanuel Quickley contract moving forward as well. But you do have to throw in 2 first round picks to the Clippers, who don't own a lot of draft capital moving forward. They get a little bit deeper with this trade in getting Quickley and Dick, and I would like to see the Raptors be aggressive this year, and you can have a James Harden, Jamal Shed backcourt. Maybe at times you'd have Scotty Barnes, Jakob Poeltl, maybe RJ Barrett and Brandon Ingram out there, some different lineup iterations that they think can maybe make a run this year. All right, here's my second Trae Young trade idea. This one is going to be the Washington Wizards trading for Trae Young in division. Trae Young is going to the nation's capital in exchange for Chris Middleton's $33 million expiring contract, Bub Carrington, the 14th overall pick in the 2024 draft, and a 2028 swap between Philly, Brooklyn, and Phoenix that Washington got in the Bradley Beal trade. So this one also matches up with kind of what Pascal Siakam and Brandon Ingram have gone in the past. Maybe you can get an intriguing young guy. Maybe you're getting a lower tier first round pick, and you're getting matching salary that could hopefully be off the books sooner than later, and that's what Middleton is in this deal. So it gives Atlanta more financial flexibility in the offseason when they have a free agent in Kristaps Porzingis, and it gives them just more options with the first and the second apron in mind. And you got Bub Carrington, who's shooting 45% from 3 this year, 41% from the field, averaging 9.5 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists, and a future first round pick. Just gives you a lot of optionality moving forward in Atlanta when this year isn't a complete wash yet. but it's been disappointing. For Washington, you get your floor raiser in Trae Young. You get somebody that can lead these young guys to maybe their first playoff appearance in the 2027 season. Trae Young is still objectively a good offensive point guard in this league. He is averaging 19 points and 9 assists this year in about 10 games. I know that the Hawks are 2-8, but Trae Young would be the best Washington Wizard since maybe a peak Bradley Beal season, maybe since a peak John Wall season. And they also have a ton of financial flexibility to give Trae Young a 3 to 4 year large deal in the offseason. Trae Young can split that backcourt with Trey Johnson. You also have Keyshawn George, Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, a potential top 5 pick in this year's draft to build around Trae Young moving forward. I just feel like Trey would make Sarr and George and all these young guys better in Washington, D.C. I just want to see the Wizards good again. Last Hawks trade idea. This one is them pivoting off a Trae Young trade idea and them being more aggressive, trading Kristaps Porzingis, who did have a nice first game back against Minnesota, Zachary Sachet, the #1 overall pick in the 2024 draft, who's been in some trade rumors as of late, and a 2026 first rounder, which is a swap with a couple teams, and right now that is projected at number 16 right now for Atlanta via the Cavaliers in exchange for Anthony Davis. So you basically go from Kristaps to AD. Both those guys have health concerns and availability issues, but Davis is a better player than Kristaps Porzingis, in my opinion. Sachet gets a new environment, and you're giving up probably a pick in the late teens, early 20s. I expect Cleveland to be better throughout the course of the year and finish as a higher seed than they are right now at number 8. And now you're going all in. You're getting a top 16, 17, 20 guy when healthy in Anthony Davis around Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Dyson Daniels in Atlanta. And it does feel like Sachet has been somewhat of an afterthought this year. I would love this return for Dallas, but I would really like for them to get a third team involved to take on Kristaps Porzingis. They tried that once before. It didn't really work out, but I do think Kristaps, if he could play like he did against Minnesota, they could get some type of value for this year if they could maybe to bring this into a 3-team trade. Maybe the LA Lakers are interested in Kristaps Porzingis. I don't know if they want to do Luka and KP again. He's an expiring contract though, so there's not a ton of risk into it. Does Toronto want to get involved in this as well and maybe try to go from Jakob Poeltl to Kristaps Porzingis if possible? Who knows? I'm sure the Chicago Bulls would want to take a flyer on Kristaps Porzingis so they can get their playing tournament game. I think there's a bunch of suitors out there for Kristaps Porzingis. You get Zachary Sachet, who still has 2 years after this year under this rookie deal, although it is an expensive one since he was the #1 overall pick, but I think could be a nice complimentary young piece around Cooper Flagg moving forward. And then you get another first rounder this year for Anthony Davis, who I think it's time to move on from when you can. And then the last trade I have is somebody that just dropped 55 points on this team the other day. We have Kawhi Leonard getting traded to the 1-seeded Pistons. Yes, I have the Pistons going out and making a very big deal. It's Kawhi Leonard and Chris Dunn going to Detroit. Chris Dunn could be their Dennis Schroeder 2.0 from last year's playoff run if they can't fully trust Marcus Sasser, who's been playing good as of late, and they're throwing in matching salary. Tobias Harris goes back to the Clippers, a team that he was traded to for Blake Griffin in that 2018 season. Karis LeVert helps match the money. Jaden Ivey is maybe the big ticket piece coming back, and a lottery protected first round pick this year. This pick is probably going to be in the mid to late 20s. Right now, they'd be giving up the 29th overall pick in the draft. The Clippers can see what they can get in Jaden Ivey, who's a restricted free agent at the end of the year. Maybe he plays on the qualifying offer next year, but can get way more opportunities in Los Angeles. And then you get Tobias Harris's expiring money, so you're going to have more cap flexibility in the offseason. And Karis LeVert is also a free agent after next year, still gives them all that 2027 offseason financial flexibility. Detroit, though, makes the big splash going out and get Kawhi Leonard, who's been playing some amazing basketball as of late for the Los Angeles Clippers. I think the Clippers would probably get a really good return for Kawhi Leonard. I don't think this team is winning a playoff series this year, but Kawhi is maybe playing the best basketball of his career. 28 points, 6 rebounds, 50% from the field, 38% from 3, and he's shooting 95.8% from the free throw line on 6 attempts a game. Like I said, Kawhi has been unreal as of late. 45 against Utah, 55 against Detroit, 41 against Houston. The Clippers have been one of the better teams in basketball as of late, but I think this would be the time to sell high. But if Kawhi gets an injury anytime soon, they're not going to get anything for him right now, in my opinion. And I think the way that he's playing, you should capitalize on it. And yeah, Detroit, Cade and Kawhi in the playoffs together, that's a team that could win the Eastern Conference. So that's gonna be it for me. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, I would appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Let me know what you guys think about these 15 trades down below in the comments. Did you like some of them? Did you dislike some of them? Let me know, or maybe give me your trade ideas down below as well. Would love to hear what you guys kind of have that could shake up the league. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.